While it was clear that God had a plan in eternity past for the Tagbanwa people group living on the island of Palawan in the Philippines, to our knowledge, the plan became visible in the 1800s when a Tagbanwa tribal chief, also called a Ginoo, had a dream. In that dream, it was revealed to him that an outsider with light-colored skin, specifically no pigment in their skin, would arrive and bring a message from Ampuang Diyos, God, that was vital for the Tagbanwa people to listen to. And so they waited and continued to live in fear of the spirits that they had been working to appease for generations and generations. It wasn't until the 1950s, almost a century later, that outsiders with knowledge of the gospel of Jesus Christ began to make the effort to reach these resourceful but fear-bound people. Our story intersects with the Tagbanwa people back in 1978 when my wife Barbara and I joined a team of church planting missionaries who were committed to learning the language and culture of the Tagbanwas. Along with two other couples at that time, Peter and Chris Green, and Tim and Karen Grossman, we set out to live among them and demonstrate with our very lives the grace and love that God, their Creator, had for them. Over the next few years, God used all our lives, the Tagbanwas and our own, to make clear to these people how much He loved them. As we learned their language and taught them to read it themselves, our team worked on translating the Bible into their language, and God even used moments when we could serve them with medical care to knit us into their community. Over time, God opened the hearts and minds of these dear people to His saving power. And in the early 1980s, the church as we know it was born in the village area of Lamani. Following that, there was a growing desire on the part of these new Tagbanwa believers to reach out to the neighboring and not so neighboring villages of other Tagbanwa communities in order to share this life-giving message with them. The challenge, though, was the further that our guys would go to share the gospel, it began to be a problem for leaving food in their homes for their families. The Tagbanwa are food poor. They live off of the jungle and the ocean, and they make rice fields. Average Tagbanwa home has enough food in it for about 3 days. So an evangelist or a Bible teacher that would go and want to minister in another village, he had the ability to hike a day, minister for a day, and then come hike a day home. And after that, he had to provide food. Realize we need some kind of way of helping them to be able to use their land more efficiently. And God provided through IMB's Rural Life project that they had started on another island. We sent 4 of our young people over there. They actually learned another language and went through that training program to learn how to do integrated farming. So we started this integrated farming training program so that we could help them produce a lot more food for their families, to have not only for their own relatives, but also to support missionaries that are going out. Along with that, we have a community health Bible program that starts in Genesis 1:1 and teaches through Acts with an overview of the rest of the New Testament. And God has used that in an incredible way. In 2000, Martin and Gracia Burnham were taken hostage and held for a little over a year. And it was during that year the Philippine government realized the way to root out the rebels that were up in the jungle was to push roads up into there so that the military could get up in there. And as a result, they pushed roads into almost all the areas where the Tagbanwa lives. And today, God has provided 37 motorcycles that our evangelists and Bible teachers use for traveling into these villages that are still without the gospel. We could have never reached them, even with the increased food production and things like that. We're talking 180 miles one way from the mother church up to the farthest point where the Tagbanwas are planting churches today. God has blessed immensely. 34 churches, somewhere around 3,300 believers. He's raised up probably nearly 100 church leaders, pastors, elders, and deacons to lead the churches. One of the ways that Barbara and I have continued to be directly involved and engaged in encouraging and strengthening the Tagbanwa Church is through annual teams that we would bring into the village and then spend about a week with the team providing all kinds of services. It's a time where we get to interact with the students who are going through the training center. Often we time it during their graduation so that we can encourage them in their ministry as they're moving on out into the different opportunities that God's giving them. Before this story wraps up, let me share one more illustration of how God moved in ways that we didn't even realize until long after this took place. We had just finished building a bamboo house for our family to live in, and were literally one more night away from moving into this new home, when in the middle of the night we received frantically delivered news that our new house was on fire. The type of traditional construction that the Tagbanwa use meant that the house burned completely down to just a charred set of posts in the ground. While this was a loss for us, it represented the worst-case scenario for the Tagbanwa. For the people of Lamani, this meant that the spirits that they were in bondage to surely were against our coming, and this fire was a way of telling us we had to leave. They were deeply saddened at the inevitability of us leaving in fear of those spirits as well. But we prayed, and we were emboldened to demonstrate our trust in God. We chose to build in the exact same location, putting new posts in the same holes from the burnt-off posts. The Tagbanwa were initially terrified for our well-being and avoided getting anywhere near our home and property. But when we didn't get sick and die, and it appeared that the spirits had no power over us, it added to their receptivity to the message that we had to share with them. We didn't know the fullness of these details until just a few years ago, when one of our older and wiser Tagbanwa believers and elder in the church was asked about a key point. The Tagbanwas realized the God that our team was teaching about was the true God. Amay Limbuan told us, "Your house became a monument, a marker that stood in contrast to everything that we Tagbanwas feared." As we look at the Tagbanwa work, we realize God started it before we were ever on the scene, and God continues after we no longer physically there. But God's wanting to use us right here where we are, because He's been preparing and working ahead of us so that His Word will have an eternal impact on people for the sake of God's kingdom. Don't miss the opportunity that God's already laid the foundation for, so that you can be a partner with Him in fulfilling that great commission, taking the gospel to the ends of the earth, starting right where you live.